Hello and welcome to another video. The Game of Wool started in the UK last night and I watched it and I have views about it. I must admit it wasn't as bad as I'd feared, but I do have some views about it. I think it could have been done better. So I thought I'd have a chat about it today, so I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns, I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through our website YarnAddict.co.uk. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And welcome to all the new subscribers recently. We've had a bit of an influx of new subscribers. Not sure why, but there's been quite a few in the last week or so I really appreciate that. So the Game of Wool, which seems to have been talked about it for a long time now, I guess they would have started casting it like a year ago, but I feel like I've been hearing about it for well over a year, maybe 2 years, I don't know, but it seems like it's been in the works for a while. Finally aired on Channel 4 in the UK last night. If you are not in the UK, then one way of watching it would be to use a VPN and download the Channel 4 app. So I'm in Norway at the moment, visiting my parents. I have a VPN. I have NordVPN on my tablet, and I set that to the UK, and then I watched it on the Channel 4 app. So if you're not in the UK, try, if you have a VPN. I find some of the free ones aren't that great, but try and download a VPN, set it to the UK, and then download the Channel 4 app, and hopefully you should be able to watch it, but you probably need to use a VPN. Anyway, it was on last night. First, I want to say having a show like that in prime time on a British channel, one of the main channels in the UK, I would say is very good. It's got the similar format to Great British Bake Off. Is that what it's called? No, British Bake Off. The Bake Off. I don't actually know the full name of the show. I don't watch it because I'm not particularly into baking. I caught glimpses of it, but I don't really watch it. And the Great British Sewing Bee, which has been going for quite a few years now. I don't watch it regularly. I think I watched one or two series a while ago, but I haven't watched it regularly. But I do occasionally watch the odd episode or part of an episode, or I see this on social media, but I don't watch it regularly. There's also been a show on British television called the Pottery Throwdown or something. It's about pottery. I haven't really watched that at all. I don't watch a lot of reality shows apart from Strictly Come Dancing, which is the British version of Dancing with the Stars, and I watch The Real Housewives, which I'm kind of addicted to. But apart from that, I don't really watch reality shows. But I've been looking forward to this. My expectations were really low. So the word on the street was that it would have a similar kind of format to the Great British Sewing Bee, but sewing is a lot quicker than knitting. So bearing in mind that knitting has a bit of a old lady image amongst regular people. You know, us regular knitters know that that's not true at all. I've been knitting since I was a child. There's people knit in their 20s, 30s, teenagers. You know, knitting is not just for old ladies, let's face it. But one of the ads during this program was an ad for cremation. There's a lot of ads on British television now for funerals and cremation services. And I don't know which company this was. It was basically done in like a folk song type style. So like a couple singing about cremation. And I did find that quite funny in the middle of a program that's got a bit of a old lady vibe, or you know, the general members of the public think it's for old people. I just felt like the ad was stereotyping what most people think knitting is about. I must admit, this program did not give you this is knitting is only for old people vibe. There were, I can't remember now, but I think there were about half women, half men. And none of them were particularly old. There was younger people. I don't know the ages of them. There was one man and one woman who may have been my age or slightly older. I'm not sure. I'm terrible at guessing people's ages, but the age range was fairly wide, and there was as many men, I think, as there was women, or was there slightly more women than men? I'm not sure. One of the judges was Di Gilpin, and She is a fairly famous, well-known designer. I've certainly been aware of her for as long as I've been knitting in the UK. Obviously, I wasn't aware of her before I moved to the UK, but she's fairly well known, I would say. I think she has her own yarn brand as well. And the other judge, Sheila, and I didn't get her surname, she doesn't appear to have like a social media presence or anything. I assume she works with Di Gilpin. That's kind of the impression I got from what I've read online. So I'm assuming they're friends and know each other. So I don't know why they chose to judge as they did, but they seemed okay. More about that a little bit later. So my fears was that this would be really cringeworthy and it would just show off knitting in a really bad light. And I'm a bit mixed about it, to be quite honest. It wasn't as bad as I'd feared, but it wasn't as good as I'd hoped. Main thing is we got a knitting program on British television in prime time on the Sunday evening, 8 p.m. on the Sunday evening, taking over the slot that I believe was Bake Off. I think Bake Off has just finished and is taking over the Bake Off slot. So from that point of view, it's really good. It's Sunday evening, 8 o'clock, it's pretty much prime time. So on a fairly major channel. So I think that's really good. I'm really impressed with that. They talked a little bit about history of Fair Isle knitting. They set 2 challenges. The first challenge was to knit a Fair Isle vest in 12 hours. And they talked a little bit about the history of Fair Isle and what was expected of them. And some people were criticizing online that they weren't explaining terminology. I thought they were. I thought they explained terminology fairly well. But also, all the reactions I read online had been from knitters. Now, I don't think this program was necessarily aimed at obsessed knitters like me. And if you're watching this, you're probably an obsessed knitter as well. I don't think this program was aimed at experienced, obsessed knitters. I think it was aimed more at the general public, because I don't think they would have put it on Channel 4 in prime time if it was aimed at people like me and probably most of you who are watching this channel. Experienced knitters who've been knitting for a long time, who can knit a variety of techniques, who kind of know what we're doing and are fairly obsessed with knitting. I don't think it was aimed at us. I think it was aimed at non-knitting people. And if you can bring more people into knitting, that's a great idea. What I didn't like about it was the fact that it was all done in chunky wool. So there were set 2 challenges. One was to knit a Fair Isle sweater in 12 hours. So obviously they had to use chunky wool. There were certain things they had to have in that 12 hours. They'd obviously been told about this in advance because they'd all planned out their tops in advance. To knit a Fair Isle sweater to fit a certain measurement, you have to swatch and you have to know your tension, and they always had to plan out their motifs to make sure they fitted in the circumference they needed. And that's a lot more difficult in chunky yarn because you have fewer stitches per 10 centimeters or per centimeter or per inch, whichever measurement you use. So if you're knitting, if I'm planning a Fair Isle sweater, I need to make sure that the motifs I choose will fit around the whole circumference seamlessly. And that's a lot easier if you have a smaller tension measurement. So if you have more stitches to 10 centimeters or 1 centimeter or 1 inch, that's a lot easier because you then have, you can then choose from more motifs. If you have thicker yarn, you can have fewer stitches per centimeter and it makes it a lot more difficult to plan it. So I thought from that point of view, they did really well. I like some of the motifs they chose weren't traditionally Fair Isle as such, but they also were told to knit a garment that described them or their life or had something to do with their life. So from that point of view, I think most of them did fairly well. One of them, I think it was Gordon, he chose to steek his garment. Now, steeking chunky wool is challenging. I see where he was coming from because he probably thought it's much easier to knit in the round than steek it, but it's quite time consuming. I saw a lot of comments online saying, well, do they have access to a sewing machine because you'd need to sew seams to be able to cut it? No, you don't. You actually can crochet it. So I don't know. The judges weren't impressed with his steeking. I feel like they should have given him bonus points for the fact that he attempted steeking. Steeking is more traditional to Fair Isle than knitting the front and back separately, I think. That's my understanding anyway. So I think he should have gotten some bonus points for doing that. It also looked like he was trying to add a pocket, which I don't quite understand why, because that wasn't in the brief. So that just seemed to add extra stuff for the sake of it. I guess they could, I don't know whether they had a chance to test knit their product at home. If I was doing this and I was given the brief in advance, I think I would have bought the yarn for it and done a test knit at home to time myself to see how long it would take. But I don't know whether they're allowed to do that or not. But I see people in the sewing bee. I think they're allowed to practice some of their stuff before they come in. I also don't know if the 12 hours were done as a 12-hour thing in a day. Obviously, they need to be able to eat and go to the toilet and have drinks, and there was no refreshments or anything like that on set that we could see. So I don't know whether they were like knitting for 2 hours, having a break, knitting for 2 hours, having lunch. I don't know. If you're breaking it up into the day, 12 hours is a lot to fit in a day. So I would guess that it was maybe done over 2 days, but they didn't tell us that, so I don't know. I was watching, after the programme last night, I was watching Welsh tenor Martin from Cardiff in Wales and the Yarn Whisperer, Katie. They did a live together after the event, and I watched that. And I did say there was the 12 hours actually done as one long 12-hour block, or was it done over a couple of days? And apparently they know several people on there, at least 2 of the people on there, I think. So they said they were going to see if they could find out some information. So go and check them out. They're planning to do it next week as well. Apparently do a live chat on Instagram after the event. If I remember, I'll try and put the Instagram handles in the description, but otherwise just look for the Yarn Whisperer and Welsh Tenor, and you'll find them. Martin is on YouTube as well as Knit365, I think his YouTube channel is called. So I thought the tank tops, the vests, whatever you want to call it, looked pretty awful. I think a couple of them looked good. I thought I don't like chunky yarn, and I thought knitting them in chunky didn't make them look great, because you can see more unevenness in the stitches, and any problems you can see that a lot better. One of the women on the program said that she didn't knit garments. I think she said she'd never knitted a garment, but I'm not sure. I think maybe she was the one who ended up with a neckline that you couldn't pull over someone's head, which is obviously a bit of a problem. I think she's also the one who was mainly a crocheter rather than a knitter. So why she was chosen to be part of a program where the aim is to find Britain's greatest knitter, I'm not sure. But I don't know what they were selecting people on. More than just knitting ability, I think. So you want people with like interesting stories as well, I guess. So I think if you're going to do non-stop knitting, especially on chunky needles, that would be a recipe for some kind of wrist, hand, neck injury. I certainly couldn't have done this. I did not apply because I assumed when I first heard about it that it would only be open to amateur knitters, and that if you worked in the knitting business you wouldn't be able to apply. So I didn't even look into it. But unless I've been designing knitting patterns for 20 years, I don't think I can pass as an amateur anymore. Elsa, I think that's how you pronounce her name. She was Scottish. I really liked her tank top. It looked really good, professional. It had some good details in it. It looked well finished off, and it was all finished. Several of them didn't finish. I also thought Lydia's looked neat, and I liked her choice of colours and motifs as relating to her family history and background. So I like those two. Some of them just look like a hot mess. None of them were blocked. They could all have probably done with being blocked, but I'm assuming they didn't have time. So before we talk about the second challenge, let's talk about the presenter, who was Tom Daly. If you don't know who he is, he actually grew up in a town near where I live in Cornwall. He grew up in Plymouth in Devon, which is not in Cornwall, but it's in Devon. But it's the nearest city to where we live. And it's where my husband works. It's where my daughters were born. It's where we lived when we first got married. It's where we go if we have hospital appointments. It's where we go for shopping, like clothes shopping and stuff. It's our nearest city, so it's like half an hour from us, so we go there a lot. And he was raised in Plymouth. He is an Olympic diver. He was quite successful, so he was basically on the local news as quite a young teenager, I guess, when he first started doing well in diving competitions. He was on our local news all the time. Every time he won a competition, it felt like he was on the news. So I've been aware of him quite a long time. He's a year older than my oldest daughter. So he's probably been on like local television regularly for like at least 15 years, maybe even longer than that. He's won several gold medals in the Olympics, World Championships, and all that kind of stuff. And wasn't the last Olympics, he was the one before that. Was that Japan? It was the COVID one, wasn't it? That they postponed for a year, I think. He was filmed or pictured knitting while watching the competitions. So when he wasn't competing, he was in the stands watching knitting. And that was all over media here in the UK. One, because he's a bloke. Two, because he's quite good looking. And he's just become like a celebrity knitter. He has his own knitting brand now. He's done some books. He knits and crochets. From what I've seen, everything he does seems to be chunky. And I must admit, it's not my kind of style. What he was wearing on the show, he was wearing a kilt with some kind of poncho shawl type thing. Looked like he was knitting chunky. I thought maybe that was one of his designs, but apparently it's not. It was a different company. Not my style at all, but he looked great in it. And, he's 31. He's not my age. He's a 31-year-old man, quite fit. So he's obviously going to have a different kind of style than what I am as a 56-year-old woman. But yeah. So the second challenge was a team challenge, which I don't think they were told about in advance. So they're divided into two teams, and they had to knit a sofa cover in 10 hours. They were using 20mm needles, and it looked like they were holding several strands of chunky together, or it was just like a poorly applied super chunky. I'm not sure. One team decided to do a gradient, so they did strips of holding, I think, two strands together to get like a mild gradient effect. I have a picture, so I'll pop that up on the screen. It's a screenshot that I found online, so it's probably not the best quality. And then they had strips of cables between the ombre. So they just did stocking stitch, I think, long strips in stocking stitch, and then between them they did strips of cables and then sewed them together. Now it's very difficult to get seams to look good in super chunky yarn. They're knitting on 20mm needles. One of the contestants is called Holger. He's German. Apparently he works on Savile Row in London. He was wearing the most beautiful Farewell vest. He's obviously a very talented knitter. And you could tell he hated the super chunky needles. He was not impressed with it. I found that quite funny. He was really funny. I think he's many people's favourite. And he was the one that took the lead for his team in planning out this project. And they finished. I thought it looked great. The judges thought it was a bit boring. I'm not quite sure why, but I thought it was great. The other team did a sunset beachy kind of vibe. It's supposed to be like a sunset on the back of the sofa, and then like I think it was yellow garter stitch for the seat and some kind of wavy blue beachy vibe on the sides. They were also supposed to knit covers for the legs of the sofa. It was just like a classic two-seater basic IKEA sofa. And they didn't have time to do the legs. So one of them was knitting a piece for the sunset in intarsia, which I thought was very brave, knitting intarsia in super chunky wool on 20mm needles. Not something that I would have attempted, I must admit. But I'll put a picture up on the screen. They didn't quite finish. I don't think they sewed anything together. They seemed to be pinning it to the sofa. I thought this looked a bit like a hot mess, and if you looked closely at some of the stitches, one of them obviously isn't a very good or experienced knitter because there's a lot of twisted stitches. So I'm assuming either they were twisting the stitches when they were purling, so they were sitting the opposite way on the needles to what Western knitters normally do, and then not realizing that and then knitting them the normal way, which would mean they're twisting. So some of the photos I've seen online look like they were twisted in every other row. So they were basically criticised for it not being finished and looking a bit messy, but they thought it was a more creative design. And yes, it probably was a more creative design, but they also had to finish it in time. So I thought the gradient looked great. the comments I've seen online, a lot of people seem to agree with me. Judges thought it was boring. I mean, what can you do in 10 hours? Even on 20mm needles. Again, was this done all in one day or was it done over 2 days? Because knitting on thick needles like that, if I'd been on the show with my neck and shoulder and back problems, I think I would have had to drop out during the first episode, because knitting on chunky needles all day, I would have been in so much pain, which is another reason why I probably wouldn't have applied for something like that, even if I was eligible, because with my chronic pain in my neck and my shoulders and my back, I have to be careful. I mean, I can knit a lot. I've knitted a sock, UK size 8 sock with like a normal leg length that I normally knit on my socks, for about 70 rounds on the leg. They're like a proper sock in a day. I've done that. I was in a lot of pain afterwards, and I haven't done that again. But I can knit for hours every day if I have to. But I have to be careful how I sit, because I do end up in a lot of pain. So one person had to leave. The judges decided who was leaving. A lot of people seem to think they made the wrong decision. The one who was kicked off the show was Gordon. He is a cruise ship entertainer, and one of the things that he shared in like the Talking Heads interview throughout the show was that he doesn't normally knit in public when he's on a cruise ship, because he is a bit worried about getting criticized or getting comments, I think, because he's a man, so he normally just knits in his cabin. He said he was once knitting in public on a ship, and a woman told him that jigsaw would be more manly. Okay. I was watching it with my parents, so I tried to keep my I tried not to swear in front of them, but next to my nose, I put a sort of very sweary face emoji. I don't know, we just pass those kind of stupid comments like knitting is only for women. I guess there are still some people who think that out there, but I think it's sad if he feels he can't knit in public because he's had negative comments. I understand not everyone's comfortable about having negative comments about what you do in public, but yeah, I don't know. A lot of people disagree with the fact that he was the one kicked off. He was wearing a Farrell top, so he's clearly a very good knitter. He didn't finish the Farrell top for the show, but I think that's because he decided to steek it, which for me, that would have been quicker to knit in the round all the way up, but he didn't finish it, which is a problem. There was also one lady who knitted, I can't remember which one that was, who knitted a Farrell top that had a neck that was way too small and you couldn't pull it over the head. I think she probably should have been the one to go because you can actually wear it. Also, they showed all the Farrell tank tops on a dress form, but then they also decided for Tom Daley to wear them. And they all looked a bit smaller than him. So I don't know what measurements they were given, but they're given the measurements for the mannequin or were they given the measurements for him? Because they all looked a bit tight on him. But I guess the tank top fitted on the mannequin because the mannequin didn't have a head, and I guess you do need to make sure it can fit over a human head. But I think that was a woman who doesn't knit garments, so you can be a good knitter but not know how to design. So all in all, I think I'm pleased that they have a program about knitting on mainstream television. I don't think it was aimed at experienced knitters. I think it was more aimed at general people. I was worried it was all going to be chunky, and that seems to my fears have come true. I didn't think Tom Daley was going to be a very good presenter. I find him a bit annoying at times, but he was better than I had feared. He wasn't as cringy as I thought, cringeworthy as I thought he would be. The judges seemed okay. I wasn't quite sure what they were judging on. I don't know. I don't agree with their decision to send Gordon home, partly because of what he was wearing. But having said that, you can wear something that looks amazing, and that doesn't mean you've knitted it yourself. So I don't know. I assumed he'd knitted it, but I don't know. So if you watched it, let me know. What do you think? If you're abroad, remember you can try and download a VPN and set it to UK and download Channel 4 app and see if you can watch it. Let me know what you thought of it. Will you watch it again? I will watch it again. I had somebody comment because I put up a post on YouTube last night, and somebody commented on it and saying that I'm not going to say who it was, but she was watching it with a group of knitter and they were not impressed. So I'm mixed. I think for a general public, it was probably okay. I mean, it's an entertainment show for general public. I might try and watch it with my husband next week and see what he thinks of it. So I watched it on my own this time. Yeah, I had high. Well, I didn't have very high hopes for this. I thought it was going to be awful. It was better than I thought, and I think the main thing is that it's on mainstream television in prime time, and hopefully that will make more people interested in knitting. I also think I'm a bit fed up with this whole chunky knitting for new knitters kind of thing. So anyway, this video is getting long. I might do another reaction video next week if I have any views to share. We'll see. I'll be back home next week and I'll be very busy the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what I got time for, but I am planning to watch it again next week. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.